The interesting thing about the nobles is that when they are introduced, we already kind of know them. All four of them appeared previously as parental figures for the beta kids in the pre-scratch timeline, and the comic uses that pre-existing knowledge to help introduce the nobles as characters. Nana Egbert was this caring prankster, Mama Lond was this messy alcoholic mother, Bro Strider was the fucking worst, and their post-scratch counterparts keep these traits, but add new ones, giving them depth. Dirk has Bro's determination and ability to pull off these dramatic action set pieces, but actually cares about other people. Roxy is a bubbly drunk, but also a lonely screw-up. Jane is friendly and caring, but has an inability to be honest about her feelings, which boils over into well-justified anger. The pre-scratch versions of the nobles were less people and more archetypes of how older authority figures feel when you're a kid, but the Alpha Kids are some of the most real characters in the comic. These angsty teenagers plagued by insecurities and trapped in this tangled web of messy romance. Jade's grandfather is introduced as this larger-than-life figure, this heroic, globe-trotting, gun-wielding, mustache-twirling action hero adventurer. The literal first mention of him is him being described as a badass. His mansion is filled with his trophies, taxidermied animals, suits of armor, mummies, his own taxidermied corpse. Oh yeah, it turns out he got shot by Tavros. Jade keeps his stuffed corpse in her foyer, as he instructed her to do, because there's something deeply, deeply wrong with this man. Oh look, he just shot a butterfly with a blunderbuss for some fucking reason! Despite being dead, we do get to see non-corpse Grandpa Harley a few times in Act 4 because of flashbacks and miscellaneous time travel bullshit. We see him running away from the Condents as a child to go on an adventure. We see him save John from a giant ogre. We see him meet up with the other Guardians and fly a battleship through an asteroid field. We see him taxidermy his granddaughter's corpse. Okay, seriously, what is wrong with this family? The point is, Grandpa Harley is larger than life. He's this badass adventurer who pulls the strings behind the scenes to put the story in motion. And like the other parents, when the scratch happens, he is reshaped into a character that at first matches this description, but as the story goes on, becomes vastly different. In Act 4, we get told a few times about Jade's mysterious pen pal, who loves fisticuffs and helped build the Uber Bunny. Skip ahead 1,000 or so pages, and Jade explains that this pen pal is actually her grandson from the future. Neither of those things are technically true. Skip ahead through Cascade, and the second half of the comic begins as we get glimpses of our new heroes. We see guns and ammo, we see the bunny being worked on, and then 5 pages later, we meet the one and only Jake English, Golgotha's Terror, the Page of Hope, Jade's pen pal, the biggest fucking loser in the entire comic. Put up the damn title screen. I was originally going to call this video Jake English is a Loser because that is the most accurate description of this character. This guy sucks. He sucks so much. He is so mind-bogglingly pathetic. You want to know why I began with that Grandpa Harley was this badass, larger-than-life adventurer spiel? To make it clear that this is what Jake is not. Jake English is a pathetic, annoying loser, and paradoxically, this makes him one of the most fascinating characters in the entire comic. I used to hate Jake, but every time I reread the comic, I like him a little bit more because he's so much of a cartoonishly stupid, pathetic coward that I can't help but to laugh. He's a loser, but he's our loser. Where were we? Right, Jake's introduction. Meet Jake. He likes guns and arguably has an even worse taste in movies than John. He's the one person in human history to be a genuine fan of James Cameron's Avatar, specifically because he wants to fuck the blue lady, and also other blue ladies like Smurfette? According to his introduction, Jake blusters frequently of exuberance for firearms and fisticuffs and adventure. He dreams of going on globe-trotting quests, and he may or may not be a young version of Lord English. He isn't, but the comic implies it in a way that is so blatant that it's clear that it's just a joke. Speaking of jokes, every line out of this dipshit's mouth is gold. Like, forgive my botherations, I know this is meant to be a spanking rip-snorter of a day for you and all, but do you happen to know where the devil fucking Dickens Mr. Strider might be? Why are you like this, Jake? Jake's little side quest during the early bits of Part 3 is finishing building the Uber Bunny to complete that time loop stuff from early in the comic. This requires him to get a piece of uranium, which unfortunately has been stolen by Brobot, a high-tech robot Dirk built to beat Jake up. You know, to toughen him up and make him into a man. Jake asks Hal to just give him the uranium, and Hal says No, because that'd be too easy. Hal brings up the thrill of the hunt, saying Jake loves adventure, and Jake says adventure is awesome. He just prefers the idea of adventures he can actually win. Hal calls him a pussy. Hal tells Jake that he was the one who put the robot together and thus is complicit in his own humiliation. Hal says that Jake could have set the robot to novice settings, except that makes the wrestling feel too intimate, which scares Jake. Hal solves this problem by turning the robot up to super high murder mode. Yay! As Jake heads out to fight the robot, Jane tells him about a dream she had of flying around on Prospect and stumbling across a funeral. A funeral for Jake. The page is dead, her hope is lost, the people say. You know, it's interesting that back in Act 4, the first beta kid to die was Jade's dream self. She sacrificed herself as Prospect fell to save John. Her death accomplished something. So much of early Act 6 is about paralleling and subverting what came before. Jake is the first to die, but his death isn't some act of heroism. It's an off-screen murder while he was asleep. This is a reoccurring theme with Jake. Despite his bluster, despite his dreams of adventure, Jake isn't the hero. None of the nobles are, but this idea of them being failed heroes is crystallized most heavily with Jake English. Jake is not a character who could ever save someone else because he isn't an action hero. He's a victim. Paige is dead, her hope is lost. Anyway, time to explore the scary murder island covered in giant alien monsters. Look how big that one is! And oh god, it's a Tinkerbell! Kill it! Good job, Jake. This is the only kill Jake gets in the entire original comic, by the way. Oh hey, what's that? Oh no. Ah shit, it's a goat dad! Oh good, it's dead. Now Jake just has to. The robot kicks Jake's ass because Jake is completely pathetic. During the same flash, Dirk has this badass moment where he taunts the Condens, putting the brute's head on a pike with the words, "The prince is awake, your shit is wrecked." And Jake gets his ass handed to him so hard, he meets a circuit, who he develops a crush on because he likes blue ladies. This is canonically Jake's phone background. Jake talks to Roxy about the blue lady he has a crush on, and she mentions the other blue lady who is tangled up in this love dodecahedron. Jake decides it's high time to clear the air because that's what being brave and adventurous is all about. Jake asks Jane if she likes him, and Jane, fucking fail girl that she is, says no. Jake says, oh, that's a relief because he likes Dirk. And then Jake proceeds to describe how much he likes Dirk to Jane. Well, Jane wishes that Roxy's bomb had killed her. The relationship drama in Act 6 was unpopular when it came out, and a lot of fans still hate it, but this shit is great, I love this. Also, the robot rips its heart out and explodes because, look, Jake is a fascinatingly weird fuck-up, but so is Dirk, and so is pretty much every Homestuck character. Jake gets knocked out again during Jane Enter, and has a dream bubble flashback, where Dirk explains the whole apocalypse thing to him. Jake, full of gusto, says that he wants to join the opposition and fight the Condens just like his grandma did. You know, before she died. Before he had to burn her body so the monsters wouldn't eat it. Poor kid. Anyway, it turns out that the Dirk he's talking to is a figment of his imagination, except more real because of the interaction with Jake's hope powers and Dirk's heart powers. Brain ghosts Dirk, says he fears Jake because of Jake's incredible, limitless, untapped potential. He also threatens to give Jake a boner when Aranea walks in, something that Jake shouts about in front of Aranea because Jake is Jake. Aranea introduces herself by explaining that she can control minds, which hopefully isn't foreshadowing of anything sinister. Fortunately, Aranea says that she resists the temptation to abuse these powers. These mind control powers means she can sense that Jake has it down bad. Jake says he wishes he had mind control powers so he wouldn't fuck up every interaction he ever has with another human being. Aranea explains that if Jake continues on his journey for long enough and becomes strong enough, he might be able to defeat an incarnation of Lord English. Give him the first defeat he has ever known, provide the first glimmer of hope to others that someday he could be destroyed. Aranea brings Jake to the Purple Moon meeting where he zones out during the explanation of what's going on, then comes to the conclusion that, by gum, I think that Mina lass is the Condens. I must have traveled through time. Great Scott, I must apprehend her to stop the apocalypse. This is one of my favorite jokes in all of Homestuck because Jake is just so fucking stupid. Aranea already explained that Mina and the Condens are different people, and Dirk flat out tells him, that isn't the Condens, you didn't travel through time, dipshit. And Jake ignores him and just fucking starts wailing on Mina because Jake is really, really dumb. God, I love Grandpa Egbert Jr. Dad as a character. I won't let you turn my planet into Waterworld. That movie was great, but not that great. Jake is such a fantastic character. Anyway, Jake finishes up the Uber Bunny, R.I.P., then wires to Dirk despite Hal telling him not to because Jake is a dipshit. Everything goes to hell, everyone else dies, and Jake ends up unconscious next to an erupting volcano. Most humans would die if they fell headfirst onto concrete from 200 feet in the air, even if they were wearing a helmet, but fortunately, it's hard to damage a brain that is approximately 90% weakened at Bernie's jokes. At least I hope it is, because if Jake was a normal guy, getting hit in the head hard enough to knock him out 3 times in one afternoon would be really, really bad. Guess it's up to Dirk to solve things. In the unite and synchronized flashes, he pulls off this incredible plan to save everyone, except he can't do it alone because someone has to kiss Dirk's corpse to wake him up. Fortunately, someone just chucked a bucket of water on Jake, waking him up. Hal orders Jake to kiss Dirk's decapitated head. Jake is hesitant and accuses Hal of orchestrating this, and he isn't that wrong. Hal didn't plan out this specific set of circumstances, but he talked to Dirk about how they wanted to arrange a scenario where Dirk earns Jake's affection by saving him, or better yet, where Dirk is put in danger and Jake gets to save him. Because that's what Jake wants. To be a cheesy action film hero, standing tall on some fucking mountain, kissing a dude. To be fair, Dirk denied having a plan, but mostly because he didn't trust Hal not to fuck it up. Anyway, Hal yells at Jake to kiss Dirk because everyone is dead. Jake says he pictured this going different, but tough shit! Jake kisses the bloody, putrid skull of the man he has a crush on in front of an erupting volcano while a fucking dragon flies by. What a dramatic moment. What an amazing start to a relationship. Right? This moment is this big, romantic scene, but like Jake said, he didn't want it to go down this way. Also, we as the reader are used to this, but as we saw with Roxy a second ago, kissing a bloody corpse is really fucked up and gross. This is going to be a theme with Jake. He isn't really a hero through his choices or through his courage. It's through being a warm body that other people are attracted to. Anyway, everyone enters the game. 5 months of jack shit happening later, Jake and Dirk's relationship is on the rocks because Dirk is really, really needy. Turns out the big dramatic action scene kisses aren't actually all you need for a healthy relationship. Who knew? Jake whines about this to Jane as she's setting up her birthday, which Jake did not remember because he's Jake. Jake rambles about how they're waiting around for the real heroes and ignores Jane when she says she's busy so he can ramble some more about his relationship problems with Dirk. Poor Jane, she deals with so much shit. I wish she got literally anything at all to wrap up her arc in the final eighth of the comic. Jane eventually gets pissed at Jake's insufferable, blithering bullshit and yells at him. Jake, fucking Rhodes Scholar he is, realizes, oh shit, Jane has romantic feelings for Dirk. Why are you like this, Jake? Next, Jake talks to the worst person in all of Paradox Space, Caliborn. What does this misogynistic dipshit want now? Caliborn explains that the girls are useless and holding Jake back because they're girls, and that he is interested in Jake because he is, quote, spectacularly unintelligent. Caliborn considers this to be a compliment because he's also a dipshit. Caliborn actually admires his own stupidity because it forced him to work harder and become strong. He calls friends flaws who must be abandoned so you can achieve brutal supremacy. He brags about how totally super strong he is, while Jake is a pathetic, worthless loser, and encourages him to grow stronger. There is a very telling line in this conversation that encapsulates Caliborn perfectly. He says that his choices were either to be weak when weakness is completely unacceptable, or to suffer forever until no one else existed who is stronger than him. Caliborn wants to be strong. He wants all of reality to revolve around him, and he despises the very idea of caring about other people, of ever having a positive relationship with his sister, because he thinks love makes you weak. And he wants to make Jake his rival because he sees himself in Jake. Sees a pathetic idiot like he was, and he thinks that means Jake will give him a good fight and allow him to become even stronger. Caliborn gives Jake the code for the Green Sucker, an artifact containing incredible power, but Jake doesn't care about being a big hero and fighting Caliborn nearly as much as he cares about his friends. So, he gives the sucker to Jane and... oh no. Oh no! The trickster lollipop takes away your inhibitions, turning you into this relentless, cheery nightmare god obsessed with joy. For Jane, this makes her fly to Jake and admit she loves him. She asks him to kiss her a lot and get married and have babies. Jake is frightened. She says, "There's no need to be scared, you silly goose." She kicks him in the balls off a cliff, transforming Jake into another terrifying abomination. Now, Jake's fully on board with getting married and having a zillion babies, even if it involves having sexual relations together. Hot take, the Trickster arc is scarier than Murder Stuck. Like, the Tricksters hunting Roxy is so wrong. They are not themselves, and they will take away everything that makes you you when they find you, and there is nothing you can do to hide. The Trickster arc is bizarre. It's this easy solution, solving the tangled mess that is the nobles' relationships by pretending the problems don't exist anymore. But that can't work. As Hussey says, they have to face their issues themselves, or they will never learn and grow as people. Nobles wake up in the lunar cores with the worst hangovers in human history, afraid to talk to each other. Jane can't bear talking to Jake, Roxy and Dirk can't bear talking to each other, and Jake can't bear talking to Jane or Dirk. You know, I just said that you have to face your issues to grow as a person, Jake. Jake pretends that Roxy has read it and asks, "Am I an asshole?" And kinda, yeah. He wants to apologize to Jane, but he's scared. He admits that he isn't brave and doesn't love adventure either. He's been pretending he was something he wasn't for so long, believing his lies and hoping that believing they are true is what makes them true, but adventure is doing things you're afraid of. Jake is a coward. Coward that he is, Jake gets Roxy to apologize to Jane on his behalf, even though she is 10 fucking feet away. And then he asks her to tell Jane to tell Dirk he's sorry because he's too scared to apologize directly. Why are you like this, Jake? I mean, why are all of the nobles like this? Jake is the worst, but they're all like this in their own way. It's because they're not heroes. They're nobles. They're the gases that don't react. A heart player without a heart, a life player who feels lifeless, and a hope player who feels hopeless. They weren't meant to fix things. They were meant to sit around in the void, in empty worlds, and wait for the real heroes to fix things. That is their destiny. And it doesn't matter how strong Jake's potential is, or how potent his hope is, it isn't enough to make him a real hero. Actually, wait, hold on. Roxy does accomplish a bunch of heroic stuff later on, and saves the trolls and kills the Condents. Yeah, no, I take it back. It isn't some cosmic law of the universe that dictates that Jake is a fuck-up. That's just his personality. Jake tells Roxy that he's worried he's incapable of loving anyone. Maybe that's why he was meant to be alone. Then Jack and the Condents fucking kill everyone. Everyone's a god now. And Jake's costume is deliberately lame because he's a loser. It's also very sexualized, something that becomes a running gag. Jake later tells John that he hates it because it makes people treat him like a sexy display, not a person. There's a lot of good writing in this comic, born from Jake dealing with being treated like a sex object, and also, it's kind of weird as hell because he looks like this. He's John Egbert with a slightly different haircut, which makes him a sex god, I guess? Anyway, Jade shows up. Now everything's going to be shit's fucked. At the start of the comic's final quarter, we find Jake chained up in a jail on Durst. Jane explains that she's been chosen to rule over Earth by the Condents, and that Jake will rule by her side as her obedient, scantily clad, silent husband who exists solely to sire children for the rest of eternity. Jake breaks down crying because he's scared. BGD pops up, but of course he can't help Jake, because he's only as real as Jake's ability to believe in people, and unfortunately, Jake doesn't believe in anyone. Jane says that she detests Jake and is tempted to murder him and feed him to Jade, but won't because he's just so hot. Don't worry, Jake. You don't have to worry about this blue chick who treats you as just a means to an end for long, because Aranea just came back to life. Aranea brings up Jake's unrivaled potential he will have at the end of his journey and offers to shorten that journey for him in return for him serving her needs. She offers to fix the faults in his mind, repair his broken psyche so he can finally be the true hero everyone wants him to be. She leans in for a kiss, and Jake freaks the fuck out. Aranea apologizes, promises to be more respectful of Jake's boundaries, and then immediately violates his boundaries massively. Aranea forces Jake to unlock his true power, and it is incredible. Jake is surrounded by a sphere of light which summons angels and tears Durst apart. Tally-ho! Jake shouts. I love Jake's stupid fucking outburst during this arc. Bob's your uncle! Jumping Jehoshaphat! Win one for the Kipper! In this form, Jake has no control over his actions. He's just a living bomb, reduced to nothing less than power for someone else's scheme. and the power he provides is enough to easily overpower Jade fucking Harley, something Aranea exploits to crush her under a tower. This leads to a big fucking fight, bunch of shit happens, and oh hey look, brain goes, Dirk is real now. Which makes sense. He told Roxy that believing in imaginary friends hard enough makes them slightly less fake. When Jake was locked up, BGD told him he'd be able to manifest him physically if he mastered his powers, but pointed out that if that happened, Jake wouldn't need him. Except Jake does, because Jake isn't strong enough. He needs Dirk because he's a loser. Jane kills Jake before BGD can do anything. Jake revives because that death was more pathetic than heroic. In game over, Aranea attempts to stab Jane to death, and Jake finally makes a stand. He finally does something heroic. He sacrifices himself to save his friend, and this accomplishes jack fucking shit because Aranea kills her anyway. Goodbye, Jake English. In both life and death, you were a failure. Jake, of course, gets revived via the retcon, but if you're hoping for a last-minute change to give Jake a satisfying ending, you're not going to find it in the original comic. Jake talks to Tavros about how he could never set things right with his friends, even if he wanted to. Roxy waves to him and he brushes this off as a pity wave. Tavros tells him he's immortal and has forever to get better and prove himself and win his friends over, so everyone will like him again. Vriska interjects to make sure Jake knows that this is bullshit and that he'll never amount to anything. He will never reach his potential. She can't even remember his name, calling him Jape. Tavros also calls him Jape because he's a shitty friend. Jake talks to John about how he turned out to be a disappointment. He can never be a leader or a people person or have a quality relationship with someone. John at least says that Jake is growing and that it's okay if he likes being alone. Vriska assigns Jake to deal with the Felt because someone unimportant has to deal with this nuisance, and Jake might as well do it. She also changes his name to Joke because, let's be honest, that's what he is. And so Jake's role in the comic ends with him getting beat up and eventually defeating some lame, unimportant leprechauns. Before Collide, Jake asks Tavros, is this it? Is this his fate? A complete waste of everyone's time that will be alone forever and is fine with that? Yep, that's it. That's the end of Jake's character arc. Although, there was another end. The masterpiece. Between Fix This and She's Back, we get the final Caliborn chapter. In it, he shows through claymation vines a vision he had of the future. John warps everyone to the land of colors and mayhem. Caliborn seals the beta kids away. He beats the shit out of the nobles. He defeats them. Then Jake masters his hope powers. He defeats Caliborn to save his friends, and yeah, this ending sucks. It is an even worse ending than the one we got, and yes, I would argue that it is a worse ending for Jake specifically. Like, I love the ending of Homestuck. I've explained this comic's ending so many fucking times, so keeping it simple, the entire comic is this time loop set up by Lord English, where the main characters are forced to create him, and then have this epic final confrontation. Jake defeating Caliborn is part of that loop that makes Lord English. It's exactly what Caliborn wants. It's the reason he chose Jake as his rival, so he could become stronger. The comic ends in this very bold way, with the main characters breaking the loop. They escape to Earthsea instead of praying Lord English, instead of playing his game and having the big final fight for the fate of reality. They win the game by not playing by its rules. Say it with me now, they are no longer Homestuck. That's an incredible ending, but it isn't an ending that really does much for Jake as a character. The prophesized masterpiece fight is a conclusion to Jake's arc, but it isn't a good conclusion. It's generic. It's him mastering his powers to save his friends and defeat Caliborn. It's a boring ending you see coming from a mile away, and more importantly, it doesn't really solve the issues at the heart of Jake's character. Because Jake's problem isn't that he's weak, it isn't that he's a coward, or that he isn't the action hero he wishes he was, or that he never masters his hope powers to blow up the bad guy. Those things, these things that Jake thinks are his problems, they aren't the real hurdles he needs to overcome. Jake defeating Caliborn isn't the ending he deserved, neither is the nothing he got at the end of the comic. So, let's look elsewhere. Ah, the epilogues, my beloved. Everyone hates you, which is a shame, because you're so fucking good. There's something interesting about how the epilogues handled shipping by using different timelines to canonize a bunch of popular ships, and then have most of them turn out horribly. Jake ends up getting to try out both sides of his love triangle. In Meat, he dates Dirk, and it is horribly abusive. And in Candy, he dates Jane, and it is horribly abusive. Fun! I'm saying that facetiously, but I do genuinely like how Jake is written in the epilogues. Like, I don't care about horrible things happening to Homestuck characters, as long as it's interesting, and the horrors inflicted on the Epilogues Jakes are, at the very least, interesting. Let's do Meat first, because, hot take, Meat is meaner to Jake. At the start of Meat, we are reintroduced to Jake by him fighting against Dirk on some weird pro wrestling type show called Rumblin' da Pumpkin Patch. This scene features an extended ramble from Karkat about Jake's voluptuous posterior. Dirk acts as the heel for the crowd, which is good foreshadowing of his really interesting villain arc, while Jake is this beloved, charismatic hero everyone cheers for, something Dirk has engineered to cultivate Jake's political capital. The narration describes Jake as being unable but to stare at Dirk because there's something implacably magnificent about him, untamed like a wild game beast of incredible size and strength. Their history is never far from Jake's mind. Dirk's companionship has been taxing to the heart, yet he's taught Jake so much about combat, philosophy, life, love. This bit is very sinister on a reread! But you already knew that, right? Anyway, a big chunk of Meat centers on Karkat and Jane facing off in a presidential election. Jake becomes the deciding wildcard of the election because of the terrible arcane power of his perky ass. Dirk explains that Jake has this illusion of boyish innocence contrasted with raw, sweaty sexuality that makes him so appealing. Karkat and Jane both realize they need Jake's endorsement to win. Jane attempts to seduce Jake. Shenanigans ensue. Jane kisses him, but Jake just can't help but think about Dirk, the narration explains. Jake yelps and runs away. Dirk pops up to warn Jane that her mistake was being nice to Jake. You can't be nice to him. Dirk offers to handle the Jake situation, something he's well equipped to do because he has gained godlike powers over the narrative that allows him to rewrite other people's thoughts. He uses this horrid power to groom Rose into serving him, remolding Kanaya's brain to force her to break up with Rose to keep her from interfering. Dirk is fucked up. Dirk plans to use this power to keep Jake from endorsing Karkat. Fortunately, Al takes control of the story and cuts Dirk out. But Dirk isn't worried, boasting that Jake's ass is his. Karkat and Dave take Jake mountain climbing, and Al allows him to display his newfound autonomy, speaking with confidence and an inner freedom he hasn't enjoyed in some time. Dirk bitches about this, saying that Jake isn't smart enough to make his own decisions. Jake asks why he should trust anyone trying to win his favor, and begs for someone to make a case that doesn't involve glowing accounts of his muscular bottom. Karkat gives an earnest, convincing pitch. Al presses Jake to assert his independence from Dirk because Al is a hypocrite, and Jake chooses to support Karkat. Jake heads to the podium to give a speech, and shit, Dirk's back in control, this is bad! Now back at the reins, Dirk makes his disdain for Jake crystal clear. He says that Jake's stupid, but not nearly as stupid as he pretends to be. That he pretends to be dumb to avoid responsibility. He narrates, forcing his words into Jake's mind that he stabbed Jane in the back. Yes, Jane tried to use Jake, but that's just what Jake wants to believe. He wants to think that he isn't responsible for other people's feelings, that he's being used, that he's the victim. Dirk asks, why should anyone respect Jake's personal autonomy when he's practically begging to be taken advantage of? Tell me, Jake, which one of us is really the bad guy here? Dirk narrates that Jake is in love with him, just terrified of admitting it, because to truly love Dirk is to submit to him. But Jake can see now that it's simply how things are meant to be. There are leaders in this world, and there are followers. And Jake is a follower. He spent years denying that, even though it's so elemental to his nature that it might as well be on the periodic fucking table. His mind broken, Jake shouts that he loves Dirk. And to love Dirk is to obey him. I think this might be the most fucked up thing to ever happen in the entire Homestuck franchise. So much of Jake's arc is about him being denied autonomy. He is constantly treated as a sex object or otherwise used as a tool in other people's schemes. Jake is, symbolically at least, a rape victim. His interactions with Aranea back in the original had the same undertones, and the epilogues just hammer them in. In Meat, we get this sickening, putrid scene where Dirk doesn't just violate Jake's mind, but he insists that he's justified, that Jake's the real villain. That Jake wants this, that he was asking for it. And Dirk's fucking with Jake's mind, it destroys him. Jake humiliates himself at the press conference. At the end of Meat, When Dirk leaves to make a Homestuck 2, Jake begs to come with him because Dirk has rewritten his mind to keep him from thinking about anything but how much he loves Dirk. Dirk says Jake isn't coming. He's leaving, and Jake is never going to see him again. Dirk orders Jake to serve Jane as her brain-dead candy boy and provide her with children. Thousands of children who will grow old and die while Jake spends an eternity with a woman he doesn't love. Jake cries that this is dreadful, and Dirk tells him to man up. Jake begs Dirk to take him with him. Dirk kisses Jake, then pushes him away, vowing to never let him break his heart again. Jake isn't really the focus character of Meat. The book is about Dirk, and Jake exists to be a demonstration of Dirk's unrelenting cruelty. It's horrific, and damn if it isn't brilliantly written. So, we had metaphoric rape and Meat. What does the other half of the book have waiting for us? More rape? And literal this time? Christ, being Jake English is suffering. So, long story short, John decides against completing the time loop from the original story, which causes all of reality to begin unraveling. Dirk freaks the fuck out, abandons his electioneering scheme, and decapitates himself to get out of this shitty timeline, which means that Jake gets to suffer in different, non-Dirk related ways. Her election hopes dashed, Jane stumbles to Jake's mansion, finding him doing drunken target practice. She leans on Jake, telling him she's been wrong with all this girl boss shit, and now just wants to settle down and raise a family. She could be a good wife, she says, because dramatic irony is fun. Jake says, "Good luck finding someone to swiftly impregnate you." Why are you like this, Jake? Jake wakes up the next morning, lying in a bed with Jane, only barely able to remember what happened. He spots the trickster lollipop. Huh. So this is rape, right? Like, Jane was also inebriated, but she got inebriated after she decided to sleep with him, and John flat out calls it rape later in the story, and this is meant to parallel the very rapey Mead plotline. Anyway, Jake is obviously uncomfortable about what happened, but he is too socially awkward to voice his discomfort, so instead he marries her and has a child. They named the baby Tavros because I guess they wanted to make sure he was a loser. Also, Jane adds Gamgee to this throuple. Also, she becomes a fascist dictator. Jake is left in this deeply, deeply miserable experience, and he's too scared to speak up about his displeasure. When we check in on the Crockers a few years later, things have deteriorated into flat-out abuse, scratch that, into kismessitude. Things are also rough for Lil Tavros, who, and this is such a dark fucking joke, but I love it, is so miserable that he reacts to being asked if Gamgee is molesting him by saying, "Yeah, that seems like a thing that would eventually happen to me." Oh, this poor kid. John crashes out and tries to rescue him. It doesn't go well. Go watch the Epilogues video for me recanting that amazing writing. Anyway, 10 years later, after Jane's gone so far off the deep end that she's petting blobfish and going to war with Karkat, Jake finally leaves her, taking his son with him. They go to stay with John because they have nowhere else to go. Jake asks if John thinks he's a bad person. After all, he's ruined his entire life and all of his relationships. John doesn't blame him, but Jake says maybe he should. He's gone through his life feeling like nothing was ever within his control. Pushed around by Jane and Dirk, he found it comforting, but stopped just being his life when his son was born. He says he's worried that he ruined his relationship with Tavros. But at least he's trying now. At least he got Tav out of that house. Candy is yet another story where Jake is pinballed around and treated like shit, but I kinda like his arc in this epilogue, because he gets out. Maybe it's too little too late, but he starts to make his life better. Both epilogues feature dissections of Jake's flaws, but in Meat, it was a rant from someone who hated Jake, justifying why Jake should suffer. In Candy, it's Jake pointing them out, Jake deciding to overcome them, Jake deciding he doesn't want to suffer any longer. And Jake's optimism inspires John to rethink his own life, something that will surely last more than 24 hours. God damn it! Right, the sequel comic. Let's talk about that story again. The Meat timeline has a side adventure for Jake where he hangs out with Jaspros, and I don't give a shit. This comic has enough characters. Meat Jake should have been left miserable and forgotten. Oh fuck no, what purpose does he serve by being there? Anyway, Candy Jake starts hallucinating BGD again, and ends up going back to Jane, but to spy for the revolution. Jane hasn't even noticed he was gone. Jake being a spy sounds cool in theory, but in practice, it just results in a lot of scenes of him being wishy-washy and doing nothing to stop Jane. He sets Yiffy free, but then immediately regrets it when she starts smashing shit. It's cool you're proud, but also, you're just standing there, dipshit. Oh, also, he inadvertently keeps Jane from sacrificing Tavros to gain political points, but that wasn't on purpose. Anyway, then the comic got cancelled and relaunched, and now it's beyond canon and actually readable. A bunch of shit happens because this comic has 4 lines all waiting, but eventually, we get a scene where Jane considers using her super mega death laser to blow up the meteor base and kill all of her and Jake's old friends, who are, at this point in the story, in possession of their son. Jake mumbles his discontent at this plan. Jane mocks him for being a terrible father, and Jake actually stands up for himself for once, telling a story of him saving Tavros from Gamzee when he was a kid. Something Jane never even noticed. Jane has a rare moment of clarity, realizing that she's a shitty mom whose son hates her. She says that she's been under so much stress, and if Tav never felt any love, it's because she barely had anything left to give. She tells Jake that she knows he left in the epilogues, but she forgives him. She's loved him since she was 13. She says the only thing that Jake has ever wanted was to be absolved of guilt. She understands that and accepts Jake. She asks him to believe in her for just a little while longer. I really like this conversation because for a long time, this is what Jake wanted. To be accepted, to be loved, to be absolved. But in Candy, he realized he had an obligation to want more. Jane leaves and Jake freaks out to BGD. Brangos Dirk says Jake has 2 options. Kill Jane or stay by her side. Give Tavia a happy future or let Jane live. These are the only options because Jane won't ever change. Why would she? She'll have won. Jake says that he's worried that there's more of him that's bad than not. That's why everything gets fucked up all the time. Everyone is waiting for a better version of him to pop up, but that's never going to happen because if it did, then it wouldn't be Jake anymore. Ultimately, Jake makes his choice. He goes into Jane's office where she's about to fire the death laser, easing her guilt about killing Tav with the justification that she'll do better with the next kid. Jake hugs Jane, pulls her in close, and shoots her in the head. Unfortunately, Jake English has never once in his entire fucking life not fucked something up. Jane spits the bullet out and beats Jake to the brink of death, only stopping when she realizes that if she kills Jake, she'll be alone. Forever. Jane dumps Jake out of her ship, planning to prevent him from betraying her again by scrambling his frontal lobe and ensuring it doesn't heal right. It won't be much of a change, she thinks. The battle begins. Jake shouts his son's name. In the S-break flash that climax beyond canon's first act, a lot of shit happens. The armies fight, Jake gets shot in the head, Jake gets dogpiled by Jane's goons, and then, finally, he rises up. Finally, we see Jake's full power. And it is incredible. He vaporizes the soldiers. He brings Jade back from the dead through sheer willpower. He saves his son and granddaughter. When Jane fires her laser, Jake summons a force field of pure hope, saving everyone and buying Vriska enough time to do her own shit that we don't have time to get into right now. This is excellent. After a life of being meek, of letting other people dictate his actions, of being too scared to make a decision, Jake finally masters his powers, and it's cool as hell. But even more important is why he masters them. Jake finds something worth fighting for, his son, and makes the hard choices he has to protect his future. He rejects absolution and forgiveness and instead chooses the hard road, becoming a better person. This is an excellent ending to Jake's arc. But, as much as it pains me to say this, there's another comic that ended his arc better. So, Double Death of the Author. I made my feelings about this comic clear in April. It has some good moments, but god, it is a chore to read, and no one exemplifies these traits more than the Double Death version of Jake English. There are endless, miserable conversations of him going, "Woe is me, I'm too much of a coward to talk to my friends." But, eventually, the comic does some interesting things with Jake. He's sent to venture into the big Xenon canon on his planet to complete his world quest. There, he encounters a specter of his grandmother, formed from the flames that dispose of her corpse, drawn in this incredible art style. Flames burn Jake and he breaks down, crying. BGD gives him a pep talk, and Jake manages to face his fears. There's a great scene where Jake and Dirk are forced to play Simon together to solve a puzzle, and in doing so, work through their issues with each other. And then, Jake gets stabbed in the eyes by Lord Jack, allowing Caliborn to possess Jake. You know, so much of Jake's arc in the original comic is centered on people just wanting him for his body, so the comic might as well make it literal. Caliborn tells Dirk that he gets why everyone drooled over Jake, despite him being a loser. It isn't about Jake, it's about his power. Caliborn uses this power to kill Dirk by ripping out his heart. Dirk revives, rips Jake's soul out, and takes it to Prospit, where the nobles revive Jake using his peanut allergy corpse. One miserable 90-minute argument later, the nobles work out their issues right in time for Caliborn to arrive on Prospit. Caliborn shakes the planet, boasting that he can use Jake's hope powers better than he ever dreamed because Caliborn believes in himself in a way Jake never could. The nobles have a big, badass fight scene against Caliborn, beating him down, but Caliborn musters Jake's hope powers and fires a blast at Roxy, Jane, and Dirk. Jake jumps in the way and summons his own field of hope, which overpowers Caliborn, knocking him away. Jake grabs Caliborn and says he can't believe in himself like Caliborn does because Caliborn's a moron who doesn't even have the faintest self-awareness that he might ever be in the wrong. Jake sucks, but fuck man, Caliborn's so much worse. Caliborn can't grow because he isn't ever willing to acknowledge any of his flaws. Caliborn says the friends were a weakness, but Jake proves him wrong because his strength isn't his belief in himself. It isn't confidence or mastery of power. Jake's strength is his friends. He doesn't need to believe in himself because he has friends who believe in him. With one mighty punch, Jake knocks the eyes out of Caliborn's stolen body, evicting that evil little turd once and for all. I like this ending. I like it a lot. Because despite the really, really rough road to get here, it is a great climax for the themes that define Jake English. And at the end of the day, I like the idea that Jake's strength is in power. It isn't him learning to believe in himself, it's in Jake finding solace in other people, repairing his bonds with them, and being okay with who he is because they believe in him. He isn't the big action hero. He isn't the swashbuckling adventurer or the demon-slaying god. He's just Jake. And that's okay. Another video down. Good job, Casey. What to do next?